Hello and welcome to the news. So today is a pretty interesting day because we've got a release date for patch 6.1.2, which is going to bring the WoW token functionality into the game. That's kind of fun, and there's not really been a great deal of other news, but MMO Champion released some really interesting statistics that I think really do make for a great discussion, so that's roughly what we're going to be covering in today's video. Let's just start off though with WoW Token because it's the direct game thing. Now, it's not actually coming out right now. 6.1.2 is being patched in on the 24th of March, 25th for the Europeans, but the feature won't be activated until a later date. And it's actually going to be starting off in the Americas region, so that's the USA, Latin America, places like that. And after that, it's then going to expand in the following weeks. So basically, if you are European or maybe if you're in Korea or something like that, you're going to have to wait a little bit of time. Honestly, I'd say at least a month off, because Blizzard in their little press release thing, he did say the following weeks, multiple weeks. So it's going to be quite a while. Now, the interesting thing, and I suppose one thing that really a lot of people wanted to know, was the price of this feature. And it is $20 US, or your regional equivalent, so I'm going to assume maybe £12.99. This actually makes sense, and it is in line with how other games price their WoW token equivalents. In WildStar, Cred is more expensive than a single month subscription. In EVE, a Plex is more money than a single month subscription, and I suppose it sort of makes sense. It's a little bit more functionality, and because it can be used for this gold buying feature, I can see Blizzard tacking on a little bit more, because quite obviously, if it was the exact same price as the base subscription, then there would be literally no reason to buy a subscription. Well, I suppose other than for the multiple month discounts. Plus, of course, Blizzard want money, which I guess it makes sense, they are a business, and well, this way they can make an extra $5 per month subscription fee, and that's just... it's how I expected this would go, and I've seen some people be rather salty about it, but it just kind of, it makes sense as the thing which a business would do, and I don't feel too salty about it, honestly. Certainly, if you want to get angry about something, get angry about there being too many mounts in the mount store, and the mounts in-game being kind of pants in comparison. There you go, have fun with that. Now, in terms of other things, these are going to be region-wide in terms of you selling them on the auction house, and this is in order to increase the volume of tokens that can be bought or sold. Obviously, that makes a great deal of sense, and it's great for the lower population realms. However, one interesting thing that I saw pointed out is that because you can sell gold from one realm onto another realm, essentially it could, apparently, maybe supposedly anyway, mess up the local economies of some realms. Now, I'm not too sure if that will realistically actually happen that much, but it's an interesting point that I have seen brought up on social media. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see how that one kind of plays out. Now, they've also not announced the starting price of the feature in terms of gold. Basically, what's going to happen is they'll set a base price in terms of gold and then just let the market take over, and that price is going to vary by region, which I suppose that makes a bit of sense. It will be, yeah, it'll be kind of fascinating to see what the differences are between, say, the American price and the European price, and perhaps if that's due to just different styles of play. Maybe the Euros farm up more gold, maybe the Americans farm up more gold. It'll be kind of odd to see how that goes. Anyway, in terms of the base price though, before patch 6.1, I was going to hypothesize maybe, or suggest 35 to 40k. I think that would be a decent enough price for a full month. However, with patch 6.1 bringing the Treasure Hunter trait, I'm going to have to revise that up to 60k at the very least. Many people have already said to me, come on man, these are easily going to be like 100,000 gold. And I think that for those of us who want to make gold, it's exceedingly easy, but there are people in the game who still struggle to get above, 10, 15k, and I think struggle is probably the wrong word, because they just don't try. Gold making is just not a thing that they find particularly fun in the game. So for those of us who do make lots of gold, pretty much any value that will apply and be attainable for the entire player base will likely be a little bit more on the low side. But essentially, the Treasure Hunter trait in 6.1 puts so much more new gold into the game's economy. For an example, back in 6.0, a few hundred gold a day was not that much. But now, this trait means we're just getting thousands upon thousands of gold popping up out of nowhere and being thrown into the economy. In terms of inflation, I think it is going to add up to something, and certainly in terms of my own spending habits, it's meant that I've been spending more. You know, I've been looking at the black market auction house, thinking about spending money there. I've been getting more crafted gear made for me, just off the auction house, because I've got so much money. Like, I've got 420k at the minute, yet I've spent so much, and it just seems even hard to keep my total amount of gold down. Ah, weird, they're just throwing gold at us as much as they can. Also, I suppose I should quickly mention that Blackhand is going to be released on LFR this next lockout. It's odd how they've done the LFR stuff with Blackrock Foundry, and I suppose for Highmall as well. It feels a lot more strung out than last time, which I suppose you could construe as a negative. One thing that I have liked, though, is 3 bosses per wing. I think that's a lot more palatable than the 4 that we had in the Siege of Orgrimmar, and it means that doing an LFR is more of a quick and handy thing as opposed to, I just think it was a bit too long, actually, in patch 5.4. But anyway, you'll be able to kill Blackhand. I've got no idea what he's going to be like on the LFR. Hopefully it won't be another Iron Maiden situation. Iron Maiden was a little bit strange in the LFR, probably a good thing that they did nerf that recently. It's a bit odd to me still that the end boss of a tier, or of a raid gets its very own LFR wing that is again delayed by a few weeks, but I suppose Blizzard's current MO with LFR is certainly to keep it down a little bit, and I'm in general okay with that because I don't think it's a very sustainable form of gameplay, and if they push people into anything, I think they should be trying to nudge people towards the normal plus rating, because that, right now, that's where the game is at. I'm sorry, like, there's hardly any world content at the minute, and what's there is pretty much all pants. The PvP is an absolute shambles this expansion. The only thing that's really good is the dungeons and raids, and that's probably what they need to be pushing people towards. Anyway, with that stuff covered, it's time to talk about the interesting stats from MMO Champion. Now, there are 3 different things. The first one is the number of blue tweets, the second is the number of max level characters per player, and the third one is the percentage of players who have completed a few various Ashran related achievements. So it's interesting stuff actually. Now let's start off with the blue tweets, and I think this is definitely the one that caught my eye the most. The decrease in the amount of blue tweets that have happened since the launch of Warlords of Draenor it's frankly ginormous. I mean, in the sort of January 14 to October 14 period, we were averaging maybe 120 tweets a month from the Blues, and this is MMO Champion measuring the tweets that they picked up and posted. I'd say it is roughly representative though, and I was actually chatting with Chod, who is the guy who does the MMO Champion posts, on Twitter, and I think we both came to the conclusion that, yeah, communication has just really dried up for the devs. And the consolidation into the Warcraft devs Twitter handle, which was supposed to just have all the game-related dev speak in one Twitter handle, has just kind of led to there being less communication. It feels less natural, and yeah, it's odd how that's really played out. I thought it would be great when it first happened because they did have some communication missteps. For an example, there was a period where people just weren't sure about Blood Elf models and when they would come in. But now that it's happened, yeah, it does kind of suck that we're getting a good bit less in terms of the Twitter talking. And also, just in terms of my own stuff, I used to get so much more news from developers' Twitter accounts, whereas now, like, I can't do regular news videos because there's just not as much being said. Anyway, in terms of the raw numbers, though, as I said, you've got like, you know, around 120 during 2014, but then the averages drop. Right now, it's kind of between, like, 20 and 40. Which really is quite a big drop. And just looking historically, you see a lot of tweets when a patch has been announced or there's a big announcement or, you know, something like that. And then it sort of tails off a little bit, but never as much as it has tailed off now. And it's just a bit sad to see, honestly. I think it also doesn't help that right now we're in a stage where a lot of people are critical of the content that's being put into the game. And perhaps we're not really seeing as much interaction from the devs at the same time. And I'm not saying any of that stuff is particularly related, but in terms of the public perception that it gives out, I don't think it's particularly positive at all. And then I suppose when you combine that with the fact that most of the interviews that we've seen for recent patches have just been complete wet noodle laughing stocks with fan sites, and we don't really see a lot of interesting communication from the developers these days, and you know what, that's a little bit sad. Next, let's move on to the other stats that MMO Champion released, and the first one is the amount of max level characters per player. It is, of course, what you would expect in patch 5.4 for having loads and loads of max level characters, like say 4 or 5 plus. Well, more people had that in 5.4, and in 6.0 and 6.1, you do have less people having, say, 9 plus level 100 characters, which does make a good bit of sense, actually, but it does seem like we are earlier on seeing more people level up loads of characters, and that really does seem to be in large part due to how fast it is to level up in Warlords of Draenor. I did it in 5 hours on my druid, and people in the comments of that video have been claiming that they've done it in 3.5, which honestly is completely feasible. It's sort of mad, actually. If you've got the resources to just throw maybe 30k gold behind a character in terms of heirlooms and all those things, then you're going to level extremely fast. And I suppose perhaps there's a bit of a reflection on the current game's content. I think that the 6.1 period in terms of world content is almost analogous to the kind of crap that was going on with 5.4 lasting forever. Now, obviously in the raiding front, we've got so much more. On the dungeon front, our dungeons are new and shiny, all that stuff's great. But in terms of world content, and little quests you can go and do, or reps you can be involved with Draenor, it seems like there's a bit of a drought and a lot of stuff that doesn't seem to engage people. Yes, people say, oh well, the reps exist. Well, yeah, they exist, but they're not that fun, they're mob grinds, and quite clearly they're not engaging that many people. So it would seem like more people are kind of looking towards their alts to get game time out of World of Warcraft. Certainly, it's what I've been doing. I've now got 7 level 100s. Oddly enough, it didn't take that long. And I've got a few more to get. Soon, though, I'll have every single class at level 100, which is, I suppose, kind of fun. I'll get a lot of garrison money, that's for sure. And then finally, we've got some Ashran statistics. Now, this is kind of funny. Basically, they're tracking the percentage of players, and I think the total sample size is 3.1 million, that have completed the various Ashran achievements. Now, oddly enough, like, it seems like basic participation in Ashran is decent. For an example, getting Grand Theft First Degree, which is to loot 100 artifact fragments from enemy players, 30% of the player base have that. Activating one of those epic books, again, 30% of the players have that. But if you look at the other achievements, like say looting 500 artifact fragments from other players, that's 13%. Looting 1,000 is 6%. Having a victory in Ashran, like just a victory, only 10% of players have apparently got that. That's crazy. Doing the PvP events, all of those, only 10% of people have got that. In terms of killing the rares in Ashran, only 4% have got that. And, well, I suppose the Divide and Conquer achievement, which is to kill a total of 5,000 enemy players, that's only 0.08% of people, which that does make a bit of sense. It's a pretty big achievement. Though, it does look like Ashran participation isn't great. It seems like a lot of people just sort of dabbled their toes in it, and then got really put off. And I think they would have been put off by a few different things. First of all, the queue. Now, Ashran was designed so that you could just hop in and hop out whenever you wanted. And that's just not the case. That's not how it's panned out. They said that, for an example, the big difference between Ashran and Wintergrasp is that Wintergrasp felt like a battleground, whereas Ashran will not. Ashran feels like a battleground because of the queue. And in fact, I'd argue that Wintergrasp felt like less of a battleground because it actually had a lasting effect on the game world that all players experienced, whereas Ashran doesn't really have that. There's not much cause and effect with the whole thing. It's, you know, a lot of stuff happens, sure, but the net change is essentially zero. Anyway, getting back on point, I think that if Ashran didn't have that queue problem, and maybe if a few things were a bit better, then it would have done a better job of getting PvE players into the PvP. From my perspective, that's what I was really looking forward to in Ashran. Just as a PvE person being able to hop in there, have some fun PvP, like I used to do with Wintergrasp back in the day. Yet, I can't do that casually because of the queue, and that's just a pain in the ass. And when I get in, of course, Ashran's not that great, you know, you've got server balance problems, and just the myriad of Ashran-related issues. It does seem, from my perspective anyway, to be one of the greatest failures of this expansion. And that's just going off what I've heard in YouTube comments to my own videos, and what I've heard from other sort of, you know, big WoW people, streamers, etc. And just the general sense that I get from the player base is that Ashran hasn't been that well received. In the comments, let me know what you think about Ashran. That would be interesting to know. And also, it won't take that much effort, but how many level 100 characters do you have? Emerald Champion also did put a poll here, and what was interesting is that of the polled reader base, the largest percentage of people had 5+ level 100 characters. That is 14,859 people, which was 25.06% of the total people who participated had 5+. That's really, that's oddly high, and I suppose it does speak to the fact that if you want a level 100 character in this expansion, well, the sort of perceived, opportunity cost of doing so is so low. It's 3 hours. I could do that right now. It's 10:15 AM. I could do that before my next lecture. Get a fresh 90 up to max level. It's a funny thought. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.